Hey y'all, welcome back to this little corner of YouTube that I'm carving out for myself. My name is Dejanae, and I'm going to be doing the Booktube Newbie tag, but kind of my own little remix on it. I do have my handy dandy notepad so I can stay on topic and not veer off too much, and so I can remember the questions. So for starters, as I said, my name is Dejanae. People call me Dej or D. If you really know me closely, you probably call me Boo Boo. I am 33 years old, and I've been a reader for quite some time now in my life. So the first question is, why did I start this channel? To be honest, I just wanted a space where I could talk about books and TV and culture and art and all the things that I love with a very specific focus on Black art, specifically Black books, because those are the books that I prioritize and the books that I love to read the most. um Most of my first public social media page where like I didn't mind sharing content to quote unquote the masses was TikTok. And if you know anything about TikTok and the way that its algorithm works, it's very easy to find people who have similar interests to you. And I felt like sometimes it's hard to make longer form content on TikTok. And it's not that I want to yap for hours and hours, but sometimes I do want to talk about a bunch of different things. And it's hard to do that in a short amount of time because it's very easy to lose someone's attention on TikTok. So I wanted to come to YouTube. I did try my hand at YouTube quite a few years ago, but I just was in a very bad place in my life. I was also in a really bad relationship, and I just needed a way to separate myself from that time in my life and go through this growth. And now I'm back, and I think I have more of a focus. It's not just like lifestyle content or content about my life, because that's not something, especially at the age of 33, that I would even feel comfortable doing. I don't mind showing glimpses into my life, but like I can't have my life be the content, if that makes any sense. When did I fall in love with reading? Um I've always been a reader as far as I know and as far as my parents and people in my life tell me. But from my own memory, when I really fell in love with reading was probably in middle school around sixth grade. That's when I was really picking out books for myself, discovering the things that I loved, reading books with my friends so that we could talk about it. Some of the books that I remember being really popular amongst like me and my peer group when I was in school was Tuck Everlasting. That was like really, really big when we were in sixth grade. Like all of us girls were reading that. I also was read the series of Unfortunate Events series by Lemony Snicket. Me and my best friend Kim read it. She specifically had all of the books and I didn't. So I would be at her house reading those books. And then there's that one really big popular fantasy series that everybody was reading. I don't even need to say, you guys know what I'm talking about. And then what else? I remember like towards the end of middle school, maybe like seventh, eighth grade, into my freshman year, the Click series. Ooh, girl, I was eating the Click series up. And then I went to a really small all girls Catholic high school, and one of the models on the cover of the Click, she was in my graduating class. Shout out to you, Kelsey. I hope you're cool. Like, I don't know where she is, but like, stunning, very, very gorgeous, gorgeous girl. Okay, the next question is, where do I like to read? To be honest, I will read anywhere, and I do mean anywhere, but if I could really say like my favorite place to read or my favorite reading setup, it's going to be on my couch. Not this one. In my home downstairs, we have like a big sectional couch in the living room where we like actually hang out. It's in this one specific corner of the couch, not where the chase is, but like the other corner. And like I'll have my tea propped up on the couch. I'll have some kind of snack in a bowl right here because I'm curled up right in this little nook right here with a blanket over me and holding the book. Ooh, girl. It's like, it's the perfect reading vibe. Reading on the couch is definitely top tier. Second to reading on the couch, I would have to say, is reading in the bed, but that's a very dangerous game. Because me, I will fall asleep in a minute. Hell, I'll fall asleep on the couch. But the bed is particularly dangerous. What kinds of books do I read? I think most of all, I would probably say that I read a lot of contemporary fiction, and then I also read like a lot of literary fiction, specifically written by Black women or Black femme authors. That's just like, that's my little area, my niche. But I also do read quite a lot of romance, especially in the last 3 years. I've really become more of a romance reader. Um, I will delve into some historical fiction here and there, specifically if it's recommended to me. If someone that I trust recommends me historical fiction, I'm more likely to pick it up than picking it up on my own. And then I also really love memoirs, and I really love a good essay or collection of essays. Yeah. I do. I love all of those things. Okay, this is where my little remix on the newbie challenge is going to happen, and I am going to talk about 5 books that are really close to my heart, tell you a little bit about them, and hopefully you'll pick them up. The first one is How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith, A Reckoning with the History of Slavery Across America. I read this book maybe 2 years ago while I was working at the library. I had access to the audiobook and I just started it, and I was doing inventory. And when I tell you my whole shift went by and I was just listening to this book, I didn't have a care in the world, scanning them books, listening to this book. Clint Smith essentially is traveling all across America to different sites like the Angola prison, Monticello, like all these Wall Street, popular places in the United States, and talks about the history of slavery in those places and how essentially enslaved Africans built this country literally brick by brick. And now the United States is trying to erase that history and make, or whitewash that history, make it cleaner. Um, phenomenal book. I think this should be required reading for every American. Then we have The Color Purple by Alice Walker. This is probably her most famous novel. I read this when I was a baby. I was like 18 or 19 years old, and I found it at the bookstore at my school, and it changed my life. And it's so funny to say that because before I'd ever read this book, I'd probably seen the movie The Color Purple dozens of times in my lifetime. Like I'm a black person who grew up in the United States. Like The Color Purple is just like a staple in the black community, but this is such a beautiful account of like womanhood, finding yourself, finding your voice, sisterhood, the way that women take care of each other, the misogynoir that black women experience, and how we continue to survive and even thrive sometimes in the midst of all these things that are trying to tear us down. And I just like, if you ever read The Color Purple, like I don't know what to tell you. You gotta pick it up. She's a chunker, but The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois is one of my favorite books of all time. I've read it 3 times. It is a very hefty novel. I will say it's one of those books that you have to take your time with. If it takes you a year to read it, if it takes you 2 years to read it, it's fine. It's a family saga. It starts really almost at the birth of the United States as we know it. And it follows a singular family through multiple generations. But in the present timeline, it follows the main character, Ailey, from her childhood all the way into her being a young adult. And it shares her trials, her tribulations, how she comes to know herself racially and as a woman. Um, I just think it's so beautiful and it's so powerful, and there are so many great characters that you meet. And I feel like most of the people that we meet, especially in Ailey's family, their storylines are really fleshed out, so you don't feel like you're like left hanging, because obviously there's a lot of time to give you what you need to know about these characters. And if you want to know who my favorite character is in this book, it's Uncle Root. Jazz by Toni Morrison is a classic. This book is very near and dear to my heart because it is the first time in a classroom that I read a book that I felt that I could very deeply and easily identify with the culture that was being represented. There is a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt and a lot of mess in this book, but the way Toni Morrison weaves these words together and describes Harlem, New York City, even in just like the opening lines of this book, I was like, oh, this book is quintessentially black. Like sitting in that classroom in undergrad, being one of the very few, if not only, Black people in the class that I took this in, I was like, this is amazing. And I was so happy to have finally, in all of my years of schooling, read a book, a Black book that I really felt like, oh yeah, I can get jiggy with this. And then last of the five books that are near and dear to my heart is Bitter by Kweke Emezi. Kweke Emezi is one of my favorite authors. I've read all of their published work, except for the one that comes out this year. Bitter is very special to me because it follows an artist and a young woman who is very afraid of being a part of what she sees as a very violent revolution that's happening around her. She just wants to be safe. She wants to make her art and she wants to feel comforted. But it also lets us know that we all have very different roles to play when it comes to the liberation of all people. And Bitter very quickly realizes that her role is to be a support and to make art, and that is okay. And I think that's very special. And this is a YA novel, and I feel like it's really, really, this will be good for young people, but like it was good to me and I read it as an adult. Okay, next question. Here are five books that I would widely recommend from very different categories. And since I ended with an Kweke Emezi book for books that were very near and dear to my heart, I will start with, if you are a literary fiction lover and you like a book that has a little bit of a taboo subject going on, I would highly recommend The Death of Vivek Oji. Whenever people ask me, like, where should I start with Kweke Emezi's work, I typically tell them to start with this book because I feel like it's a book that, like, you cannot question that it's good, that the writing is powerful, and that like Kweke Emezi is a masterful author, but also I think it's quite polarizing. And if you do not like the subject matter of The Death of Vivek Oji, outside of the two YA slash middle grade duology, I don't know. I don't know if you'll be able to get jiggy with Emezi. So I always recommend this one widely. For sci-fi lovers and lovers of a time travel novel, a book that I would recommend is Kindred by Octavia Butler. Octavia Butler's work is kind of having a resurgence right now of appreciation because a lot of people feel that it feels very prophetic. Not this novel specifically. I'm thinking of the Talents duology. But Kindred is really a great novel. It travels from between 1970s and back into the late 1800s. Don't get me to lying on the timeline. But if you haven't read it, you definitely should. For those who enjoy memoir, I highly suggest Heavy by Casey Layman. This is one of the most raw memoirs I ever read in my life. When this man was talking about his mama and the stuff that he was, I said, "Oh, this is no holds barred. Like you're not playing with us. You're giving us the things." And also, this memoir inspired me to write. I always said, after I read this and another really great memoir, In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, after I read those two books, I was like, if I was going to write anything, it's going to be in the style of writing that Casey Layman is doing here, but also with the kind of experimentalism that is happening in The Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. For my nonfiction lovers and my music lovers, I'm going to suggest They Can't Kill Us Till They Kill Us by Hanif Abdurraqib. He is just talking about music and popular culture and life. Like he's talking about all the things, but nobody's talking about it in the way that he's talking about it. And that's why you need to read something by Hanif Abdurraqib. And I suggest to start with this one. Lastly, for my folks who like to read a little bit of YA and they like a thriller, I suggest Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Ayimide. This is a thriller. It's dark academia, haunted halls, two Black students in a very white school. It's some weird stuff happening in here, and these two right here. Dang, what was her name? Chiamaka and Devin. Yeah, they're gonna get to the bottom of it. I'm actually probably due for a reread. It's been a while since I read this. I also think that Abike Ayimide's other book, When Sleeping Girls Lie, I thought that was really good as well. So those are five books that I like widely recommend. I'm going to end the Booktube Newbie Challenge here. But if you have any questions about me, my reading taste, what I like to read, any other books I might recommend, books that you would recommend to me based off of these 10 books that I just showed you, please leave them down in the comments and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Thanks for being here. Bye.